me all right?
Yeah.
I apologise about the voice, thank you. I know I sound like I've got a touch of the Robert F. Kennedy about me, but I promise some different opinions tonight. So I just want to say thanks very much to the organisers of this really important event. Thank you very much for the speakers who come out here tonight, all of you very important in your different ways. It's amazing to see principled political actors, and you'll find them here, you'll know them by their resignations and their sackings, so thank you for coming out, all of them. And I want to mention also Barnaby and Loki in particular. I think is one of the most important voices of dissent we've got as a class in this country. The persistent work they do, telling the truth in today's culture is extremely brave, and it's important. It's an inspiration to an awful lot of people who don't often have the chance to express what's in their hearts, so thanks to you guys as well. Look, I think the cause of peace and the anti-war movement is, has never been as important as it is today. And I think it's for that reason we're facing attacks in the way that we're facing them in the present moment. The era of the United States of America being the preeminent and unrivaled power on this planet since the fall of the Soviet Union and the end of the Cold War is over now. We're in a different world. There are different poles of power and shifting alliances, and because of that, the world has never been more dangerous at all. We see as the shifting media attention is now on the current crisis in this long and miserable story of the crisis and the conflict in Israel and Palestine, shifted away from Eastern Europe. Alliances and allies that were made there are now quietly being dropped, and suddenly we're hearing murmurs of peace talks where we were told they would never happen. And this is against the backdrop of the biggest build-up of military power seen in generations in the Mediterranean. There are two massive battle fleets from the United States in the Med right now. The British Navy is over there as part of Group 2, the Southern Battle Fleet and the NATO Response Force. And I've got to say, for the RMT piece is extremely important, and we've often got reasons beyond the rest of the trade union movement in Britain. And those reasons are counted in their thousands. There are members in the Royal Fleet Auxiliary. There are two ships in the Middle East right now, the Argus and the Lion Bay, in which our members are working. These are humanitarian civilian vessels. They're an auxiliary fleet to the Royal Navy, and their primary function is to assist in crisis zones, normally where there's natural disasters, to help civilian populations. They're there in a tinderbox where we could see this conflict and this current round of violence spill over into a much broader conflict when we take into consideration the shifting alliances around the world. So, I've got to say, I've never seen anything to the scale as what we're seeing now in my lifetime in the violence that's being visited on the Palestinian people. And I have to say very frankly, if you take into account what Israeli ministers are saying, what IDF spokespeople are saying, what United Nations rapporteurs and senior people are saying, what human rights lawyers are saying now in their hundreds, when you take all of that into account, alongside the actions that we're seeing, starvation of a population for water and food and fuel, the indiscriminate bombing of a civilian population, the bombings in refugee camps in the West Bank, which has got nothing to do with the events on October the 7th, where we see the escalating violence in the illegal settlements, the rise in evictions, I think we're looking at a genocide unfolding before our eyes, and we cannot be silent in the face of this. We must stand up and be proud. I think sadly the prospects are bleak, and the reason I say that is because I've been protesting against Israeli crimes against the Palestinian people for as long as I've been able to protest. I said in the other room, I held my son in my arms during Operation Cast Lead outside the American embassy when the names of murdered Palestinian children were read out. My son took his GCSEs recently. My daughters, I took in prams to protest after the march to freedom. After those marches, those peaceful civil disobedient marches were gunned down in hails of gunfire. They're now going to school. And what I fear is if there is any kind of ceasefire, or if there is even humanitarian pauses beyond the 4 hours that we're currently hearing about in the news today, that may act as a pressure valve and may act as a release to get people back off of the streets. And my message here tonight is we cannot allow that to happen again. We have to keep this going. We must keep going, and we must go beyond saying we want to end to the assault on Gaza. We have to say we want to end to the apartheid system in Israel. We must and end to the illegal settlements in the occupied territories. We must keep going until we see an end to the blockade and until we see the establishment of a Palestinian state with East Jerusalem as its capital. We have to keep going until we see that, and we can't stop. But I will say something else, and that is these marches and the anti-war movement here in Britain and around the world is having an effect. It may not seem like it is, but it is. If you listen to the rhetoric from the politicians when this violence broke out, to the subtle changes we're seeing, that is arising from the pressure from these marches, from the international anti-war movement, from principled politicians like you heard speaking this rostrum a minute ago. That is all bringing pressure to bear on the political process, because none of this is in the United States' interest. The Democratic Party in America, their base, their activist base, is completely up in arms about this. All of the alliances the Americans are going to need to rely on in the Middle East and Africa and around the world are now turning their faces away from the Americans. Anthony Blinken is about as popular in the Middle East right now as a fart in the lift. He's wandering around and he's being insulted wherever he goes. That is important. And he's not just being insulted by people he wants as allies, he's being insulted by Israel. And it's the same of our political class. And so when we hear Keir Starmer and the mealy-mouthed words from Emily Thornberry and David Lammy and the rest of them, Emily Thornberry's my MP, I tell you, she'll never get a vote from me as long as she lives. I say time on the bureaucratic process of getting myself kicked out, I just didn't join in the first place, so they can't sack me off. So, if you listen to the change in rhetoric that we're hearing, that is coming about through the pressure that we're bringing, and that is why we're being attacked. We're being attacked and we're being portrayed as if we're peddlers of hate and we're the complete opposite. And if you want to know how that's working, I recommend to you the short video that Loki did for Double Down News. It's extremely informative. You can see the dark forces that are at play behind this. They're seeking to rally lumpen sections of our society, far-right people. They're trying to portray us as being unpatriotic, as somehow we're spitting on the memories of Britain's war dead by calling for peace. If they've forgotten what armistice means, God above. But we have got to be wary, because they're not going to stop there. This weekend will come and go, and whatever happens will be blamed in this movement for anything that goes wrong. And if they can't stop us then, if they can't get enough public outcry to ban marches, then they'll start attacking us as individuals. And I've got to tell you, the RMT, we know how that feels, we know how this hostile media works, and I haven't paid my TV licence since they had Tony. I forget which massacre it was now. Operation Cast-Lead Pillar of Defence, they all merge into one another. But I remember the late Tony Benn on the BBC trying his living best to make a very basic plea for humanity and call for aid to Palestinian people who are suffering, and they shut him down. I've never paid my TV licence since then. They'll never get a penny off of me. I'll do charge for it. These are the forces that we have got arrayed against us. But what we've got is each other. And the things that we believe in are too important for us to be put into a state of fear. We've got to keep coming out on the streets, and we have got to keep the pressure up on the politicians. And I have to say, I want to make a call to the broader trade union movement in this country. We have got a historic role as the organised element of the working class to fight for peace and against war. The fight for peace and the fight against war is the fight for working class people, no matter where they are. And we have got to be in the forefront of that. So I say to trade unions right now, who are thinking about the sectional interest they may have in industry, or the hopes that they may be pinning on any future incoming government, they must put that side in the interest of humanity. Because what we're seeing, in my view, is a genocide unfolding. and we must stand up and be candid. And we cannot stop when there's a ceasefire. We have to keep going until the Palestinian people are free.